Alright, now before we change the oil here, I'm actually going to flush it out. Now, instead of using a commercial flushing product, really heavy detergents and stuff, which I'm not a big fan of, I'm just going to use an old trick, which is just to use automotive fluid. I had this extra here, which is about a year, getting on almost maybe 2 years old now. So I'm just going to buy a new one as a backup to keep in the truck. I only usually carry one extra fluid, and I don't usually need it. But we're going to put that in the motor oil, and the detergents and stuff in it are going to help break down, and then we're going to run it probably this afternoon, and then come back late this afternoon, and we're going to change the oil. Now, first of all, there's one of the emails was from Rooftop Eagle, and he's actually taking a class locally to learn more about motors and automotive stuff, and I think that's a great idea. As I've said before, part of my learning curve has just been doing everything myself that comes up with this truck. That's how you learn. You really need to start with changing your oil and your air filter. Learn how to change your spark plugs, spark plug wires, and it goes into your distributor. You know, I've had some hard luck knocks learning on some of these. My older truck, International, I actually had a distributor shaft break inside the shaft. The whole thing would just spin. The top rotor would just spin. I wasn't getting any spark, and I could not figure it out. And all of a sudden, I realized, I'm like, oh, you're not supposed to be able to turn that, you know, without the motor going all by itself. So got towed to the nearest town. I was actually out in the mountains when that happened, and spent a couple nights in my truck while they got a distributor in for the International, and then I taught myself how to time and install a distributor. That was a learning process, but now I know. So for kind of the biggest thing here for winterizing your vehicle, there's only really a couple things that I'm going to do differently than I do the rest of the time of the year, and then we'll go over some of the things that I carry in the truck, maybe in addition to some of the things we saw in the earlier videos, the truck EDC and all the bug out. I think it's 1 through 6 or something. Kind of goes into really breakdown detail of what I carry in the truck on an everyday basis, really. And so I'll throw some extra stuff in what I normally will put in the truck in the wintertime. So one of the main reasons you really want to do a seasonal look over and change of a lot of things in your truck or your car is because if something breaks, it's going to be twice as hurtful on you to be out in the middle of nowhere or be stranded in the middle of nowhere if you're not going to fix it yourself, waiting for a tow truck in really bad conditions. You know, it's different than just hanging out in 60 degree, 70 degree weather in the sun waiting for a tow truck than it is, you know, in the winter with 20-mile-an-hour winds bringing the wind chill below zero, that kind of thing. So that's kind of the reason you really need to take a good look at everything, because you don't want things to break in the winter. With that, one of the things that gets colder is your battery is going to have a harder time cranking when it's cold. They do make battery warmers for kind of the extreme upper latitude, Alaska. A lot of those guys, especially the diesel guys, really need to have a warm battery because their truck won't start. They don't have spark plugs. They require all electricity to get those glow plugs going to get a truck to start over in really cold temperatures. So some guys prefer a battery warmer. It's not quite that extreme here in Central Oregon, so I'm not going to worry about that, but you should have a new or couple-year-old battery. You can get your battery tested. If you go to a local auto parts store, he can test your battery, and he can actually tell you how good your alternator is doing. Your alternator on the other side over there is what's going to charge your battery, and your whole charging system needs to be up to snuff before it gets cold. Next thing on the list is the coolant department. Now with mine, because I had flushed it a bunch and just had the water pump done, I was running all water with a little bit of like a glycol lubricant in there to keep things from rusting, essentially. But I didn't have any antifreeze in there. So what I did and I prefer to buy the all antifreeze stuff and mix it myself. But if you are not privy enough to know how to do that, you can easily just make sure that you've got a 50-50 mix of antifreeze in there. There are little, I'll take this off here. Truck's a little warm, but I think it's alright. There are little testers that you can test in there, and the ball will float to tell you what your coolant to water level is. I can sort of tell by the water that comes off here, the color. Obviously it's going to be more diluted than the bright green. Alright, I had some questions on the Fiat video about the thermostat opening. And essentially what happens is your motor has coolant lines through it. From there you also have coolant lines that go to the heater core that provides the heat to your inside of your car. Basically like a small radiator. Then you have the large radiator in front that holds a large volume of water that helps cool the motor. Well, when the motor is cold, when it first starts, this is what's called the bypass here on the thermostat housing, and essentially it's going to circulate from the water pump up, and when it's cold, it's going to put it right back into the motor. It's going to circulate in the motor so it has a very small amount of water that it has to heat up. That helps the engine heat up quicker, and it will heat up part of the engine core, but that's a very small line that runs into there. Now, depending on what temperature your thermostat is, mine's at 180. When that water inside your motor is at 180 degrees, that thermostat opens, and it allows water to flow up the upper, down in here, through all your radiator fins, through the bottom, and then it comes right up into the bottom part of the housing where the water pump is, and then it's going to circulate it all the way around. And that essentially keeps your motor from having to heat up all those, probably 5 liters worth of coolant at initial startup. It helps your motor run better. The oil gets up to temperature quicker, and it's just all around better for your motor. Also with that, if you're unsure of what's in there and you take it to a shop, or it's been a while since you had anything done, and if it's not a very new car, I would have the radiator flushed. Have a detergent run through it, have it flushed, and have the right amount of antifreeze put in as a precaution for the winter. Some of the newer vehicles use a completely different type of radiator fluid, and you don't have to change it for a very long time. Some of them are the life of the car. So this is all sort of vehicle specific. If it's an older car, I would have it flushed if you haven't had any work done on it recently. On to windshield wiper fluid. Mentioned this in the other video. I put that up there. Is when I installed my homemade windshield wiper fluid reservoir, the canteen, and we ran it up there. This is why it was orange. This is the Rain-X. This is their heavy-duty de-icer. Essentially, it has a higher methanol alcohol content in it. Methyl alcohol won't freeze. You can see it's got a negative 25 degree. This also has the Rain-X sort of bead technology. My truck is not very aerodynamic, so I need all the help I can get. It's like driving a big square brick through the air. But check your fluid. People carry extra fluid, but if you've got it some sort of a de-icer in here, you can easily just carry, a small towel or have a paper towel or something and use the de-icer on other windows and just get it right out of your squirt, or have it squirt on the window right onto a towel once your main window's done, and you can help de-ice some other stuff. You can also help de-ice door locks, stuff like that. They make a bunch of special stuff, but honestly, if you're carrying de-icer in the windshield wiper fluid, you should be fine. Other things that should just be checked, I've got a small thing of power steering fluid here and brake fluid. Just make sure that you know where your brake fluid is. Make sure that it's topped off, it's not leaking. Here's the power steering. This is generally have a cold reading mark and a hot reading mark, so I'm right at the hot one, which is because I just drove the truck a few minutes ago, so that's right where it should be. A couple things to add is to check your belts. I'm sort of lucky. I've got a dual belt system. These are both independent, so if I have one belt go, as long as it doesn't take the other one with it, it's fine. Plus, if you guys remember, I have an extra belt in my bag. Another thing to check is the condition of your windshield wipers. Probably by now it's already the end of October if you live in Seattle or somewhere where it rains. You know the condition of your wipers because you use them all the time. But just double check them before winter. Alright, you guys have seen in previous videos, I use the Delco 400, the heavy duty motor oil. This is the 1540. My motor specifically was designed to run off of straight 30 weight. And that was before they had multi-weights, essentially the 1540s. It was designed off of straight 30. So you get a little bit more off of here. The main thing is because I have what they call a flat tappet in my motor. And I need a heavier zinc motor oil. I actually think they stopped making these. I lucked out and bought a bunch of these a while ago. This is what I run normally during the year. I change my oil often, and I also have backups of stuff, and that's why I use a cheaper Fram filter. There are better filters out there. I've used K&N and stuff a few times, but because I change it more often, I'm pretty comfortable with the cheaper stuff, just because I do it more often. Now for winter, what I'm going to do is run a 5W30, and essentially it's going to give me a little bit better coating in the cold. It won't quite get as viscous, a little more engine covering with the 530 for winter, so you don't get what they call like a hard start or a cold start. You want in cold temperatures that oil to start flowing really quickly and not get thick. That 1540 would keep a little bit thicker when it's colder and take longer for the motor to warm up, and I want to make sure that I've got plenty of oil getting everything lubed up. I also went with a Napa filter on this one. This is actually made by Wix. Doesn't say that on there. W-I-X, which is a pretty good company. They just make the Napa brand. I don't think it says on there, but a very good filter. Very good filter. With that zinc quality in there, this Castrol, if you guys want to know the rating on here, is pretty good. SM is kind of a lower standard. SL, SJ are really good. SH I'm not familiar with. But it's a standard SM service, and that's what most of your motor oil is going to be. Problem with that is the zinc phosphorus content is very low on an SM. This actually has 0.09%. I know it's probably boring for a lot of people because you don't have flat tappet motors. But the zinc content isn't horrible on here. Ideally, you want to get to about 13%, or 0.13% of zinc content. And that's just going to lube your cams and stuff. A lot of times you'll see in older trucks, they'll blow a little smoke at startup. Scout does the same thing. Part of that is the oil on the cams. I'm going to try this. This is going to be a guinea pig version of this because I'm out of, typically I use a product called ZDDP Plus. You have to order it online. I've never seen it at a local shop. And I only use about, a 1/4 ounce or 1/4 of the bottle every time I change the oil. This is not zinc and phosphorus. It's a replacement additive for zinc phosphorus made by Hyperlube. So I'm sure it'll do the same thing, but this requires me to use the entire bottle. But we are going to give that a try. And Hyperlube's out of Seattle, made in the US. So I can drive up there and bitch at them if anything happens. I put a can of seafoam up here also. I don't think I'll use it in the oil this time. I really want to give this Hyperlube a chance to do something with the motor oil without any other additives or stabilizers. So it's always good to have a can around there. I just did a video with the putting it down the intake. It never hurts to put it in the gas, and I guess that's a good time as any for winterizing your gas truck. Everyone, a lot of you guys with the alcohol stubs are all very familiar with product HEET, H-E-E-T. I don't have any of that here, but that does a great job. It's almost all methanol, and it does a great job of getting rid of any water condensation that's left in the tank. Engines don't like to run with water in their gasoline, and even just condensation in this October weather, when things start getting colder, if you don't keep your tank full or over half full like you should, if you keep it closer to empty in these colder, warmer days to colder nights, there's going to be a lot of water condensation inside your gas tank. It's going to drip down and get into your gas. And that heat is a good thing to do towards the winter in these fall months to keep that water out. And this is more of a stabilizer, but seafoam is great to put through your gas anyway. Alright, welcome underneath my extremely dirty oil covered engine. You can see the Mobil 1 filter I had in here previously. That's a very good filter. And you can also see I've got two humps, double hump oil pan. That little circle right there is where the oil gets picked up from the oil pump. And so initially I actually have my truck on an incline right now because I want most of the oil in this back sump area. And that is where the drain plug is. I also luck out I can keep a bucket under here because my truck is lifted, so I don't need some of those special pans like a lot of you guys see. But we'll get that drained. Once you get the drain plug out, I know this is blurry, but that was a good time to inspect it. Make sure the gasket's still good around there so you're not leaking any oil out of there. Look for any metal shavings, anything that looks odd. But this one looks fine. You can also observe the color of the oil and the way it flows out. You can tell this one isn't too bad. But nice and warm from a warm motor. We have that automatic transmission fluid. A smaller light there. Automatic transmission fluid in there, and it's flowing nicely. No big chunks, no metal shavings around the thread. We should be good to go. Now, for taking off the filter, the only advice I have is to watch where the end is here. As I start to unscrew this, it's going to want to drip out, and it's going to drip down. So when you place your bucket, which is getting very full by the way, you'll see, well, I'm a little off. You'll see that it wants to drip down the filter there and drip off the end of the filter. And I just do that a little bit, turn it a little bit more, turn a little bit more till it stops doing that. Then you're left with just all the oil that's in the filter. Now you should just take a towel and wipe where I pulled the filter off. Now, one of the things we're going to do before we install the new filter, make sure that's level, is I'm actually going to put some oil in it. Not a ton, because I'm not going to put a whole quart in here or nothing. Because if I filled it too much, I don't know if you can see that. Well, it just maybe 2/3 full. As I go to put this back on, all that new oil is just going to leak off anyway. Now you should take some of that I spilled. I like to rub a little oil on the rubber seal here, and then in thread it. Once this meets the face, another quarter turn and you're done. A lot of people over tighten these. That's why they make all those stupid wrenches to get them off trucks. Alright, once you got it on, like I said, get that up to the face, another quarter turn, and it should be tight enough. Now obviously if you see leaking coming from there, you want it a little bit tighter, but like I said, most people over tighten these things. Alright, this is getting pretty full. This is a 3-gallon bucket. I actually double bucket it. I keep my 3-gallon in the 5 when I transport it to auto parts stores. We'll recycle it, stuff like that. Using a little bit bigger container allows you to keep motor oil around in case you ever need to use it for anything. I'll probably keep this just to maybe quench the knives that I'm making. But what I wanted to show you is how much oil is in that filter. It's the one I took off. It's the black oil that's in there. This is why you need to put oil in your filter before, so that you don't dry starve your engine. This is how much oil's just in a filter. Pretty good amount. Well, they make all sorts of stuff to attach to the top of these to make it easier to fill, but you know what? Good old-fashioned funnel works just fine.